Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, good. So, well, I just love this event. I've been sitting in the back just listening to John Jalsek from American School, Hong Kong. I've heard Jadis Blurton from the Harvard School. My colleagues, Kenny and Naomi from Nord Anglia. I go to education forums all around the world. It's my business. But you actually have to go a long way to find a better forum on education than events like this. Hong Kong is such an intense hodgepodge of education. And this is a great day. I know I have to work for my living to speak at it as well, but I really enjoy just listening to my colleagues. So I hope you're enjoying the day as much as I am. So, we are a full-blown primary school. We do everything that primary schools do. We're actually a prep school in the British sense of the word, which means that we run to 13. We start at with 5-year-olds in the UK Year 1 age group, and we run through to Year 8, 13 plus, although many of our children do move on at 11 as they go to their senior school. This is a very focused talk. This isn't a broad descriptor of everything we do at Wycombe Abbey. This is just on the aspect of how we prepare children for entry to British boarding schools, which is part of our remit, it's part of what we do. But I must make the point at the very beginning, this is not all we do. This is just one very sort of specific part, which we found from experience and from frequently asked questions. This is a question that comes up all the time, so it made sense just to talk about this particular aspect of our provision. So Wycombe Abbey School, Hong Kong, we're in Aberdeen, in Tin Wan, as you sort of head up towards Pok Phalam from Aberdeen on the beautiful south side of the island. And we have been in existence since September last year, so about a year and a half, and what a year and a half it's been for everybody. But quite an interesting time to try and found the school, to get a school up and going. But we are up and going, and we're doing very well. And I'll be talking about some of the concrete evidence that we have that we're already making a real impact, and that the curriculum that we're teaching, our style of our teaching, academically focused, but taking care of the whole child. That lovely phrase you've heard 100 times today called holistic education, teaching to the entire person. These are all things that we do. So, of course, Wycombe Abbey, famously a very well-known girls' school in the town of High Wycombe. And if you don't know where High Wycombe is, if you draw a line from London to Oxford, High Wycombe is about halfway along the line, heading up towards Oxford. Just out of the middle of the town is this sort of enclosed parkland. You probably wouldn't know the school is there because there's a high stone wall, and there's the main building within the school. Wycombe Abbey in the UK is a very selective, high-achieving, academic, 100% boarding school for girls. It's almost everything that we're not except academically rigorous, because we're a co-educational primary school. So it's a very different model, but still part of the Wycombe Abbey family. In Hong Kong, Wycombe Abbey is a private school. It is not an international school. That means, in short, that we do not have a quota for local families or expatriate families. We're open to all Hong Kongers. And we have expatriates and local families, and indeed mainland Chinese families. And when I say expatriate, a broad range of international children, although of course we have a fair few UK children amongst those. We have other schools in mainland China. Chengzhou is a K-12 school, massive campus, 1,500 children or so. That's already 6 years old, and we're opening similarly large K-12 campuses. They all have sports fields, rowing, all kinds of big space-hungry activities. We're opening 2 of those at the moment, one in Hangzhou and the other one in Nanjing. As you will appreciate, that is focusing our company's attention at the moment. These are massive projects. They're both on time, but that doesn't happen by accident, so there's a lot of focus going on. And as soon as those 2 schools are up and running, our next big major secondary school will be coming to Hong Kong. But of course, that's going to be a couple of years away, and we have several sites identified in the new territories. So, this is where our campus is. This is what we look like. And you can see, you're looking where that blind is down. This was taken early in the morning. Where that white blind is down by the green tree, that's my office. And we follow the national curriculum for England and Wales. I had the privilege, 18 months before I took this job, I was still at my school where I was head in England at Caterham. and head of the prep school there. I had 18 months to design this school. This was formerly a shopping centre, and it had been left abandoned for 5 or 6 years. It was in a real mess, and it was empty and abandoned and horrible. And we came along, and together with the architects, we designed a purpose-built primary school. And after having spent umpteen years ahead in various schools, dealing with 300-year-old buildings and listed buildings, and you can't knock that wall down, and to be able to design a school from scratch purely for primary education has been a joy. And part of that, of course, the core part of that was the curriculum. So our curriculum is interwoven, national curriculum of England and Wales, common entrance curriculum, which is basically an enrichment of the national curriculum of England and Wales, all of that woven into the EDB, Hong Kong EDB primary curriculum, so that our curriculum, although English in nature, is culturally relevant for the children of Hong Kong. Yeah, I don't think we need to spend too long on that, but I did qualify it in this. Okay. All right, so to come into the focus of my talk today, this is about how we prepare children for those families who are thinking about or who have decided that they would like their children to board in the United Kingdom. And this goes for boarding anywhere abroad. At the moment, our experience is mostly in the United Kingdom. Some families have relocated to Singapore, some families are relocating to Australia, and I am assisting with those as well. But the most common trend is either to send children to boarding school in Hong Kong. Increasingly, Hong Kong families are looking to move to the UK. And I've spent as much time talking to registrars and deputy heads of day schools. This week in West London, I've been speaking to Herodian, Lady Eleanor Hollison and Hampton School for 2 families who are looking to move rather than put their children into boarding school. So, but whatever the combination is, we are part of our remit is that by the curriculum that we have as a British prep school in Hong Kong, our children are following exactly the same curriculum taught by British trained teachers from Britain. They're following the same education that any child in a good British prep school would be following in Britain. Does that make sense? So if you picked up a great British prep school from Britain and plunked it down in Hong Kong, that's what we've got. So we're not having to do something different. We're not having to put torsion into our curriculum and suddenly make a panicky plan and put some poor child on extra lessons just because mum and dad are asking me about boarding school in the UK. Our entire curriculum is based towards that very goal. And because we're preparing children for the best independent schools in the world, in Britain, not all of them, but many of them are in Britain, by that, they're equally well prepared for anywhere else. And of course, 90% of my children also aren't going to go to British boarding schools. Most of them are going to stay in Hong Kong. And we happily feed, and we have great relationships. The agreement that we are acting as a prep school for schools like Harrow, Kellett, Malvern, Lord Anglia, we've been talking about very recently as well. We're a prep school. We're preparing children for great secondary schools. And Hong Kong is packed full of great secondary schools. So as much as this is about preparing children for British boarding schools, we're also preparing them for local options as well, whatever parents really would like them to find out about. This has got nothing to do with Wycombe Abbey. This is actually a wonderful girls' school called Prior's Field. The next 6 or 7 slides are all showing different British independent boarding schools. We can play a little game. You can tell me if you recognise the school. You wouldn't know this, except for the brightly coloured umbrellas. Wherever you go, where you see the pink and the green, that's Prior's Field. Their academic results are very good, but they have a very broad range as well. Their real strength, apart from their academics, is drama and dance. They produce fantastic, creative people, girls, as well as some top academic results as well. A good friend of mine there, Andy and Benica, started life as a circus entertainer with Circus Hall. He's a juggler and a tightrope walker and all kinds of amazing things. Saw the light and trained for teaching, but it was more exciting apparently. Anyway, he's now probably one of the greatest boarding school heads of boarding in the UK. He and his wife run the boarding house at Prior's Field. As an example of 2 girls from Hong Kong who are currently there at the moment, the kind of work our school does is to help parents find the right school. I'm going to take a racing bet that not many of you have heard of Prior's Field. And that's the whole point, There are 500 or so really good schools in the UK. Most people have heard of 3 or 4 of them. And my point that I'm coming to is that it's not a particularly good idea to start from the name of the school in our search for the right school for our child. The point to start from as we select schools to apply from is we start from the child. What I'm calling the Freddiness of Freddie. Freddie, my little guy, or Frederica, my little girl, I've got to get to know them really well. Once I know the child and the attributes, the academic capability, the personality, the resilience level, the energy, the self-confidence, the Freddiness of Freddie, then I can start to look, this little girl, we've got to talk to Paris Field. This little boy, we need to speak to King's Bruton. This little guy, we need to speak to St. Joseph's College, Ipswich. This little girl, Lincoln Minster School. Many, many schools that many people in Hong Kong possibly haven't heard of. We've all heard of Eton, we've all heard of Harrow, we've all heard of Chiltern Ladies College and Wycombe Abbey. Well, there's another 496 to have a really good look at. And part of my role is to help parents over a number of years that they're with us to select the correct selection of school, because the last thing we need to happen is that a child gets force-fed into the wrong school for the wrong reasons, because believe me, within about 18 months, it will all go horribly wrong. And that is absolutely immoral and the last thing anybody wants. So part of my job is to ensure the outcome, ensure that this child, when we get them together into the right school, that I can walk away from that job knowing that they will flourish, and I can look you, Mum and Dad, in the eye and say, it's going to be great. They're going to run, they're going to take off, which is, as parents, and I'm a parent as well, I've been through this several times, this is what we obviously all want. And part of our role, the fees you pay to come to Wycombe Abbey, it's all in. The curriculum is set for all of this anyway. You talk to me as often as you need to talk to me. We make appointments. I call you, you call me. We talk to the registrars in England, the deputy heads, the head teachers, whoever we need to speak to. We help you with the academic, and as you see in a minute, we also help the children prepare themselves. It's very easy to forget the child in all this. Mum and Dad, myself, and registrars all running around in circles. The child is sort of standing in the middle saying, well, apparently I'm going to boarding school. But they're not really part of the process. The child needs to be as much a part of the process as possible. Whoops, too much of a good thing. Okay, so, big question. When you first start thinking, I know many parents in Hong Kong or any other part of the world, but not the UK, it's a really scary thing to think about sending your child away for such long periods of time. Are they going to be safe? Are they going to be looked after? What standards, what rigors are in place to ensure that my child is going to be looked after? Any and all of the great schools, or the independent schools, they're all great schools, but the independent schools in the UK will be a member of one or more of these associations. Grouped together, these associations have their own inspectorate, which they're the only other body licensed by Her Majesty's inspectors, known as Ofsted, that have their own inspectorate. They are so trusted, they've been granted their own inspectorate, which falls under the responsibility of Ofsted, but runs independently, called fairly unimaginatively the Independent Schools Inspector, ISI. As you explore websites of schools, I just urge a word of caution. I'm one of the great marketers of independent schools, but I have to tell you, if you haven't worked out already, a website is a masterpiece in marketing. Just go into it with that mindset. You're being sold a school. However, there is one critical part of every British school website that has to be there. They have to have their ISI inspection reports in the website. And that's where the truth is. That's where you'll find out how well the school do what they say they do. A website is all about saying what they say they do. The ISI report will tell you how well do they stack up. Now, for fairly obvious reasons, sometimes those reports aren't terribly obvious on the website, but they have to be there. So dig around a bit, ferret about, and on one of those little never-ending drop-down lists, you will find inspection reports or ISI or something like that. Go in and have a read. There are standards, national standards that schools have to achieve, In boarding and in day schools, they all have the NMS, the National Minimum Standards for boarding schools. You don't get a percentage pass. Everything has to be right, or you are not compliant, and you are either on an emergency situation while you solve your issue, which could be as simple as a plug needs rewiring, or it could be a major incident, famously something, maybe bullying hasn't been dealt with terribly well, or something like that. All of that information is in the inspection reports. My advice to you is find those that enjoy the website and all the lovely images, all the lovely pictures, but drill down into the hard information as well. So what do? We help with the blocks in red there. These are the kinds of areas we cover with our parents at Wycombe Abbey. Through normally starting about year 3, we've had our little girls and guys with us since year 1, year 2. When we get to about year 3, parents are asked by me, would you like to discuss? Because sometimes parents are not quite sure if they should ask these questions, or they go off and pay thousands of Hong Kong dollars to agencies in Hong Kong to ask questions they can ask me for free. Within the fees we're already paying for the school. So the invitation goes out, we have discussions, we answer questions, we talk about how it might work if you were interested. Those parents who clearly are not interested in such things and have every intention of staying in Hong Kong, well, that's also useful to know, and we can start thinking about Hong Kong schools as well, because time goes quickly. School years go past pretty fluidly, and terms don't last for too long. And all of these things need to be thought about in advance. So certainly by year 4, we're meeting each other and we're talking, and we're coming up with a short list of schools. The school, that's Wycombe Abbey in the UK. This is Caterham in Surrey, just inside the M25, southernmost point of the M25. And one of the things, you're all quite capable of reading the slide, I'm not going to read the slide, but down at the last point at the bottom of the slide, these are the kinds of areas where consulting with the head of the school, somebody like me, can steer you away from just traps that you can fall into just by not knowing they're there. For example, mum and dad go to a lot of trouble, a lot of expense, getting the child to a British boarding school, wanting their child to be at a school, have the whole international experience, full British experience, choose a lovely school, website's great. They get to the boarding house and every other child comes from Hong Kong. Every child they're boarding with lives about a mile away from where they live in their own home on the other side of the world. Which could be great. Maybe that's what parents, some children go there knowing that they've got a cultural ownership, that they are part of a sort of a nice, safe group, and that they are supported by people from exactly the same part of the world. Other people are horrified, and of course it all goes wrong. Other things that pitfalls that can happen, you think you're going to a boarding school, and you are, but actually it turns out only 10% of the children are boarded. And the boarding house is very small and it's kind of tucked away beautifully, very well appointed, but it's a very small part of the school. That can be a problem if you didn't see that one coming. It could be a very big boarding house, your child arrives surrounded by British kids, just what you wanted, fantastic. Monday morning, what a great experience. Friday night, they all go home. And your child's battling around with somebody else from Korea and one Australian or something. And every weekend is just a small group of them left behind. These are the kinds of things we can drill down into and find out in advance. And it could be that's a good thing. It could be it's just what you want. It could be that you have relations in the UK, or maybe you have your own home in the UK, and you want them to be able to go out of school. That's all great. None of these things are bad things. The problem is if you don't see them coming, they come as a nasty shock. These are the areas where we can help and find out in good time. The coldest place on God's earth, Rodin. The wind comes from Russia, heads across a nasty place called Dunkirk, right across the English Channel, and you're standing watching your daughter play netball on the top of that cliff. It's really cold there, but a beautiful school. What a lovely place. Again, a girls' school, this one. And that brings me to my point. Girls' school only, co-ed, boys' school only. What do we want? Mum, Dad? Not sure. What did my friend say? What does it say on my WeChat? We really have to, again, get back into the Freddiness of Freddie. Where is this child going to do best? Girls tend to do very well in either girls' schools or co-ed schools. Boys are more complicated. I've nearly got myself in trouble when I did this talk about 4 hours ago, but so I'm going to stop there. Boys very often need more thinking about. They tend to settle down and be a lot more confident as they get higher up into secondary school, but a 12-year-old boy can be quite tricky to know which way to go. And of course it comes back to the individual. And we have amazing choices in both co-ed schools and boys. Wycombe Abbey, Hong Kong, we hosted for 3 weekends in September a webinar. Some of you might have heard of it, some of you might have listened in. And we had 5 top girls' schools speak in one weekend. We had 5 top co-ed schools, and we had, I think it was 4 eventually top boys' schools speak on another weekend. There wasn't a bad school amongst them, but boy, are they different. This is the point. If there's one point of this whole talk, it's the difference, which can be entirely bewildering for parents. And so we help you to cut away the confusion, cut away the stuff, and help to focus on this particular child and what would be a good selection for your family and your particular child. Royal Hospital School in Suffolk. This is on the mouth of the River Orwell in Suffolk, heavily supported by the Royal Navy. Wonderful co-ed school, very exciting place to be. And again, I'm probably willing to bet that not many people in the room have heard of it. It's an outstanding school. It's a beautiful school, just waiting to be discovered. And it's one of the schools that I would probably introduce to somebody who's looking for a really middle-of-the-road, generic. I'm getting all kinds of signs flashed up to me from that. We have a great co-ed school, so this would be at the top of my list to suggest. These are the prefects at King's School, King's Bruton. Yeah, so we would help you with all of these things. We'd meet you with the registrars. Many of them, because I've been in British independent schools most of my working life, I know many of these registrars anyway, lots of deputy heads. And if I don't know them, they probably know of me or I know of them. And we talk to each other about your children and we facilitate. You always have to make the application, mum and dad. The school can't make it for you, but we really can be just underneath with the safety net, with the facilitating. You know, I can phone up any registrar in time and say, did you get the application from Mr. and Mrs. Smith? We're just a little bit worried about this, that, or the next thing. And I can oil the wheels and just keep things moving, keep the communication up. Because it's such a long-winded process, you know, there are long periods of silence, and that can be a bit worrying if you've not been through this before. The other thing about applying to independent schools is the clue is in the name. They are independent, which means they all do things differently. They all do things the way that suits them. There is no one system. So it kind of adds to the possibility of confusion. And again, I can help you iron some of those wrinkles out. Charterhouse, Tuckett Square Charterhouse here. So as I said, we follow the EDB primary curriculum. We're just getting to the end of receiving our license to run to 13. We currently are in Year 6 to go to 13. And then we will be able to offer parents the choice of leaving us at 11 to join a senior school in Year 7, or to stay with us to the end of Year 8 and enjoy senior school at 13. Many senior schools might start at 11 or even younger. Many of them only start boarding at 13. So there's that kind of hiatus of 2 years. What do you do? Well, in Hong Kong, we can offer you a prep school that runs to 13 if you need it, and then make your move after that. We know, I'm going to finish up on this point, we know that our model is working, young as we are. 2 of my 11 plus girls joined us in Year 10 at 10 years old, 18 months ago. They applied to Wycombe Abbey in the UK. We have no automatic transfer to Wycombe Abbey in the UK. We've gone through the teaching with them, we've gone through the boarding preparation with them, they've gone through their interview, they've gone through their group test, they've gone through their cognitive ability testing, and last weekend we found out that both girls have provisional places at Wycombe Abbey. We're the only school in Hong Kong this year who have 2. Other schools in Hong Kong have 1 or none this year. So young as we are, we know that what we're doing is what John was saying in his talk just now. Schools need to stick to what they say they're going to do. And this is what we set out to achieve, one of our aims. And our first time round, we've had a very good result, and we're very pleased with it. So I know I'm running out of time. I'm very happy to take questions. I will be at table 11, or just out here in the corridor, if you'd like to talk further. But do come and see us at the school. We're easy to find in Tin 1, just outside Aberdeen. And I'd love to show you around, sit down, have a cup of coffee, and talk about your thoughts and ideas for your children. I'm just going to press the button. I don't think there's anything critical. Oh, there we go. There's Emily, one of my teachers. She went to Morton Hall herself. Her teaching career, before she came to us, was at Danes Hill. So she's been a teacher at a boarding school. She's been a pupil at a boarding school. And she's the member of staff who actually talks to our pupils who are thinking about boarding about all the other stuff, not just the academics. We're preparing, again, as I said right at the beginning, holistic education, preparing the whole child so that they are able and well set up for success in order to flourish at these schools. And I think that's just about the end of it. That school you'll recognise, and if you don't, the rugby toasts will give it away. That's a rugby school. And that's these are other companies either associated with, or these are agency companies who are part of our main company. Who, if I do need some expert help, particularly with American schools, I would talk to these colleagues who work for these companies in our group. Here we are. How it is here. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Howard. Any questions, sir? We have time for one or two questions.
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on bullying in boarding schools.
Yeah.
It tends to be a common problem.
Yeah, bullying is a common problem in any school. It's part of child development, and you know, we will be children, we'll remember. At some point, every child is going to try out influencing their will on some other child. It happened to me, and I'm ashamed to say I know I've tried it once or twice myself, probably. That's going to happen. It's what happens after that that's the critical point. That the bully is dealt with, and that the things that they are doing wrong is pointed out to them fairly strictly. What I want to call a conversation without coffee, basically. Fairly straightforward. Talk to that child so they don't make that mistake again. That the victim is looked after very quickly before they start to develop a victim mentality of absorbing it and thinking this is the norm and not telling anybody and getting into all of that. And frankly, Mum and Dad, the first people who are probably going to know that bullying is going on at school will be Mum and Dad. Because most children, like me, put their go-to-work face on. They smile their way through the day. Something horrible happens. They're not going to show anybody they've been hurt or embarrassed, or they just get through their day, get home to you, and Mum says, "How was your day?" And then they burst into tears at 5 o'clock. And your sort of reaction is, "This is what it's been like all day," but we didn't know, because bullying tends not to go on in front of teachers. It goes on in the corners, it goes on in the grey areas. So the relationship between home and school is so critical, and teachers say they need to build a school community, a school relationship. It's so that we have open communication. So you can email me or pick up the phone at 5 o'clock and you say, "She's come home in tears, somebody, can you investigate?" And we will straight away. And your child who's boarding on the other side of the world should be able to speak to you in the same way. All of these great schools have listeners, dedicated listeners that every boarder knows they can phone. These listeners are not members of staff. They are dedicated people who've been appointed that your child can just speak to this person, like a counsellor, really. And they can tell. And of course, if it's something like that, the listener will speak to the school, and the school will spring into action immediately. So, yes, it happens, but all of these schools deal with it very well. And if they don't, the inspection reports will reflect that. It's a definite heading on all inspection reports.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tuckett. Let's give him a round of applause.